I'm not a big rules guy, as you might imagine. In fact, I have this little bit that my granddaughter and I do. We say to my granddaughter, "What's the first rule of hanging out with Grandpa?" And she laughs and she goes, "No rules." I go, "You're exactly right. No rules." But I do have one rule for my family. And it was something that I realized long ago when I was younger that was absolutely important. The rule I have is that if you're in my family, one way or another, if someone else in the family needs help, you don't say you're too busy. You don't say you don't have time. You don't say you got something else to do. You fucking help them. That's what you do. You help your family. Because in this world, there are very few people you can count on. You should be able to count on your family. And why this became a big deal to me was a traumatic experience I had when I was young. Now, when I was in my mid-20s, very early married, I was trying to run a business. It was not going well as far as making money. It was going back into the business. I had no money. My wife had no money, and we were struggling. We never really asked for a lot of help from people because we just didn't want to do that. My father, who was a very successful businessman back then. I mean, this guy was making a lot of money for the times. It's the 80s, and he's making $250,000 a year. May not be a big deal right now, but in the 80s, that was a huge amount of money. He had plenty of money. Didn't particularly like the guy because he was kind of a dick, a narcissistic, sociopathic, fucking racist, misogynist. Other than that, he was cool. So while I was going through these difficult times, some people say, "Why don't you ask your dad? He's got all kinds of money." And I would never do it. I would never ask him for money because I knew there'd be strings attached. I would have to deal with some bullshit, and I just was not going to do that. But that said, I had one little bit of security that I felt I had. I don't want to ask my dad for money, but if it ever got really bad, I mean, a position I could not get out of, that I had no hope to deal with, I could probably go with hat in hand back to my father, and he would think he'd help out his son. He had plenty of money to do it. So I always kept that in my back pocket as kind of a safety valve. It always made me feel comfortable. Well, at least if it gets bad, I can swallow my pride and go talk to Dad. Well, as unfortunate as it might sound, there came a point where I was just buried. We had no money. My car pretty much exploded. So I've got a car that doesn't work. It's going to cost a lot of money to fix. I can't afford to do it, but I can't get to fucking work because I don't have a car. So I thought if there was ever a time that I was absolutely desperate with no hope, this would be the time. So I bowed my head, went in to see my father, and told him the situation. I said, "Man, I need help." And he told me, in not so many words, to fuck off. His own son, knowing he's got a wife, he's trying to start his life, and he's got plenty of money, but he says, "Fuck off." Now, it was a horrible situation because I was in a tight financial situation. But my wife and I put our nose to the grindstone, and we found our way out of it eventually. It was painful, it was hard and all that shit, but we found our way out. But the most devastating thing about that experience is this. At that time in my life, I thought I had one safety valve. I had one chance to get out of a problem. I had that hope in my back pocket. And on that day, I found out I don't have that hope, and I never had that hope, and I would never have that hope again. So at that moment, I realized my wife and I are on our own. There is nobody there to help. Now, I will say my wife's parents helped a little bit. We didn't want to go to them either. But I always thought my dad was a failsafe because he had a lot of money, and I'm his kid. I would have thought he wanted to help, but he didn't. And it was a fucking nightmare for a long time. Now, I will say I learned a lot through that process, but the most devastating thing was to realize the one guy you thought you could count on wasn't there. I'm 25 years old, and I realized at that moment that I'm on my own, and that changed my whole perspective of everything. So I told myself, I said, listen, the fact that a family member, a father, can't help his kid is absolutely bullshit. And if I'm lucky enough to have a family, I'm going to make one rule. And that rule is no matter what, if someone in your family needs help, a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a son, a daughter, a niece, a nephew, whatever, if they need help, you fucking better be there. Because without you, there's nothing out there to help them. I told my wife that. She agreed with it. She thought it was a good plan for us to do that differently than our parents did. I told my sons that, and I don't know that they remember that, but I will remind them in the future. I'll give you an example. My son and daughter-in-law have a new baby, and he's like 2 months old, and they're thinking about having to put him into daycare, and they don't really want to put him into daycare until he's about a year old. So they were kind of sheepish, and they said, could you help watch him during the week? Well, my fucking wife was overjoyed with that, absolutely. But even if we didn't want to do it, I should do it. It's my responsibility to do it. All the time my kids were growing up, we did a lot of things for the kids. And people would say to me, you shouldn't do so much for your kids. Well, if I don't do so much for my kids, who should I do for? Fuck. Well, you just spoil them and they won't learn anything. Bullshit. Both my kids are smart. Both my kids are successful. They learn plenty. But I can't sit here as a father and see my kids struggle if I'm in a position to help them out. Now, clearly that wasn't an issue for my father, but for me, it's a different deal. And that should be the case for everybody. We've got a lot of things in this world. We've got jobs, we've got positions, we've got clubs we're involved with, we've got friends. But when it comes down to it, the only people you can really count on 100% of the time is your family. And if you can't count on your family, you're fucked. You're truly fucked. Because I know I was fucked. So that's the one rule I have in my family. And I told them, I said, I'm in a position to help you now, but I'm going to get old. And I'm going to come to you and ask you for help. Do not tell me you don't have time. Don't tell me you don't have time. Because I did all the time in the world while you were growing up and while you were young adults. And I'm happy to help you, and I will help you. But I'm going to need your help someday. So you better fucking be there. I think that's a rule all families should have. I don't think a lot of families do. I think people just let people hang by a thread, and they don't really care. It's all about me. Well, the one thing it should be all about is your family, the people you love, the people you care about, and the people who love and care about you. If you can't help those people, well, then you're fucking worthless.